This is an NBC News special report. Here's Lester Holt.
Good day, everyone. We're coming on the air with breaking news of a shooting at an elementary school just outside of San Antonio, Texas. A hospital official says at least 2 people are dead and 13 children are injured following the incident at Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas. Their conditions are currently unknown. We expect to learn more about all this shortly from a press conference that officials are about to give. We've been getting reports over the last couple of hours about an active shooter situation there. But again, few details have made their way out of there. I want to go to NBC News correspondent Gabe Gutierrez, who's been watching and monitoring the situation. What do you know, Gabe?
Well, Lester, we want to be very careful right now because the numbers often change here, and we're just starting to get those details. But what we do know is that there is a massive law enforcement presence down in Uvalde, Texas, with the Uvalde Police Department taking the lead in this investigation. I've also been in contact with the Texas Department of Public Safety, who is sending resources there to the scene. As you mentioned, Lester, this happened at Robb Elementary. It is a school for 2nd to 4th graders, and we understand that Thursday was set to be the last day of school there. According to the timeline here, that this school was placed on lockdown around 11:43 a.m. local time. About a half hour later, the school reported an active shooter on the scene, and the Uvalde Police Department reported at just after 1 p.m. local time that the shooter had been taken into police custody. Again, Lester, there's a lot we don't know here. We don't know the age of the shooter, who it might be, whether that person was somehow related to the school. This area is about 80 miles west of San Antonio, about 60 miles east of the border with Mexico. But again, the latest numbers we have is that 2 people are dead. At least 13 children have been transported to the hospital. We don't have the conditions of all those who were transported, except to know that at least 2 that were transported, one a 10-year-old girl, the other a woman in her 60s. So we're still awaiting to find out more information, Lester. Again, we expect to have a news conference from authorities on the scene in just a few minutes. But the latest we have is that 2 people are dead and 13 children have been injured in this Texas elementary school shooting about 80 miles west of San Antonio, Lester.
Yeah, and prior to coming on the air, I was monitoring some of the local reporting from the scene. Parents were being instructed to go to a specific location to reunite with their children who have made their way out of that school and presumably will be bused to that location. Also, Gabe, I'm sitting here looking at that picture. I see somebody with an FBI windbreaker on. This has been kind of an all-hands-on-deck response in that part of Texas.
Certainly, Lester. This is something that local authorities, no doubt, have been on the scene now for several hours. And again, I understand, according to my sources, that state authorities are making their way there. You just saw the video there of the FBI on the scene as well. A massive law enforcement presence, as you see there in Uvalde, Texas. This is just 60 miles east again from the southern border with Mexico. Uvalde is a town of about 15,000 people. I was just in that area just a few weeks ago. Again, it is just about 80 miles west of San Antonio. And this school, a lot of questions at this point is, what would have motivated any active shooter to go into this school? Again, the last day of school, we're told, was set to be this Thursday. Again, we're still waiting to know more information in terms of ages of those injured, and including the ages of those who died. 2 people dead is the latest we have at this point, and 13 children, though, transported to local hospitals. We do not know their conditions at this point.
Yeah, and Gabe, what you said at the beginning bears repeating. This information is just coming in drips and drabs. Mm-hmm. Some things we tell you may prove to be otherwise. We're going to try and tell you what we know and what we don't know. Mm-hmm. Sadly, I've covered far too many of these and understand that progression of information sometimes is not as quick as we would like to be. And certainly a lot of anxious parents right now, people with their eyes trained on that school trying to get the latest information. We hope that the authorities will be able to enlighten us somewhat on what happened and the number of casualties as known. Aerial views of the scene. We saw what appear to be life flight helicopters parked in a nearby field. Some of these officers you've seen here were in tactical gear, part of SWAT teams, we presume. There are ambulances that are parked there as well. There's a broader picture now putting in perspective the town and the school there as the camera zooms in. As we await that news conference to begin, let me bring in Dermot Shea. He's a former New York City police commissioner. Commissioner Shea, these things, when they transpire, they tend to follow a rhythm of information. Is there anything that you can glean from the body language, from what you've seen in these pictures, to give us a sense of what may be happening?
Yeah, as you see those pictures right there, Lester, I mean, you kick into a certain methodology that you take at these incidents. It tells me just by how they jumped, bunched up there, that the incident to them is concluded. I think we're waiting now to hear the details, as we all are, in terms of what exactly transpired. If there was somebody at large or a very different situation, you would see perimeters set up, you would see safety perimeters, people kept very far distances. So, I think, as you said, I think we're getting numb to these, and I think that's the real tragedy in this, that these incidents are happening far too often. I certainly have dealt with my fair share of critical incidents such as this, but more importantly, as a parent, I think we can all relate to, you send your kids to school, and the last thing any parent wants to hear is something like this happening, God forbid. And you just wish and you pray that this would be the last one.
Can you give us a sense of what is going on behind the scenes in terms of gathering information about the shooter, about the suspect who is apparently in custody?
Well, there would be a tremendous amount going on. First and foremost, you respond and it's stop the threat. Let's assume that has been taken care of at this point by one way or another. Then it becomes get emergency help for those victims. And at the same time, simultaneously, you have to remember that this is also a crime scene. And even if there is one threat eliminated at the scene, you don't know if there's other parties. So you have to treat it as such. So it's a combination of locking that scene down, getting emergency treatment for those that need it, and preserving evidence. And you have to do all of this as you see a myriad of agencies responding to this, not knowing all the time where the next threat comes from. So are there booby traps left behind? Right. Are they going to be responding and working with authorities to get search warrants for a residence of the alleged shooter or shooters? And could there be booby traps left there? So there is a cadence to what happens here. I mean, this is what law enforcement trains for. The sad thing, Lester, I'll go back to this is something that in large cities, we've trained for this often, but it's something that's happening more and more frequently across the U.S., and it's happening in your backyard, and it's happening where it's least expected. So, I mean, all law enforcement is training for this, and to some degree partnering with brother and sister agencies. How do you respond in a case when this happens? How do you get the most amount of force in an organized manner to respond to an incident such as this?
Dermot Shea, thank you. We're going to ask you to stay with us and help us as we work our way through the information as we get it. I want to go right now to NBC's investigative correspondent, Tom Winter, who has learned some more information. What can you tell us?
Preliminarily, Lester, we're talking about an 18-year-old suspect here, and it's a little unclear to us at this early juncture whether or not this person is in custody or whether or not they're in fact deceased, but we know that they're no longer at large. That, according to multiple law enforcement officials who've been briefed on the matter. We know that at least 2 children are dead, as you've been reporting. In addition to that, 13 have been injured as well. The specifics and the type of information we're getting out of Texas, and just to kind of bring people behind the curtain, so to speak, we're getting brief from law enforcement officials in Texas. We're getting briefed from people that need to know in other high-ranking law enforcement offices across the country as to what is happening here. But as you can imagine, this is a small town. It's an elementary school. It's a horrific event. if one child was shot, let alone at least 15, as appears to be the case here. So the details are still a little bit fuzzy, and it is possible that these numbers, as we report them here, again, 2 dead, 13 injured, could rise and potentially significantly. But that's just information that we're waiting to get at this point. But as I reported, at least as far as the suspect goes, 18 years old, is at least no longer at large at this time.
All right. Tom, thank you. We're just getting word. From Governor Abbott in Texas that they have confirmed 14 dead in this shooting in Uvalde, Texas. The news conference apparently underway there. That information just being reported. We're going to try and take you to that momentarily, but that's what we're hearing right now. Gabe Gutierrez, are you with me?
I am, Lester.
What more can you tell us?
Lester, certainly that is just heartbreaking news that we're hearing from Texas Governor Greg Abbott. Again, 14 people dead in this school shooting at Robb Elementary in Uvalde, Texas. We're still waiting to hear the exact ages of those that were killed. But just in a few moments, we have gone from 2 people dead and 13 injured, and now hearing that 14 people are dead. Lester, again, this was an elementary school that it was second through 4th grade, and in a town of about 15,000 people. Right now, as you see on your screen, there is a huge law enforcement presence there as this investigation is underway. You just heard my colleague Tom Winter report that is unclear if the 18-year-old suspect is dead or in custody. What senior law enforcement officials are telling him is that the suspect is not at large. This is one of those situations, Lester, where you begin to really think about the horror that unfolded here. The FBI just a few days ago releasing a report that mass shootings were up 52% between 2020 and 2021. And right now, we're hearing of yet another mass shooting in this country that has taken the lives of 14 people.
Yeah, Gabe, and I'm getting a little more information now. This is, I believe we're quoting Governor Abbott. Again, these are bits and pieces we're getting from the news conference that 14 students shot and killed a teacher. The shooter is deceased. He's an 18-year-old who lives in that city, Uvalde. But as we noted earlier, we're getting little bits of information here. We're going to hopefully be able to give you a larger, better picture of what has transpired at this school. But the numbers are awful. They are grim. We don't have any more on that at this moment. Again, this information is beginning to trickle in. You've seen this video of the ambulances on the scene. There are air evac helicopters. You see an FBI employee there. There are people officers from different municipalities in that area who have come to respond to what was at the point an active shooter situation. How long the actual shooting took place is unknown at this time. Lots of police presence outside, honoring this area now as a crime scene that it is. We don't know much more about the shooter or the motivation. These are some of the still images now of some of the responding units, again, from across that part of Texas. This is not far from the Mexico border. This is, I believe, west of San Antonio, about 80 miles or so, and it drew a huge response. We don't know if this school in particular had practiced mass shooter drills, but we know that is now a common exercise that takes place at schools across the country because, again, we are reminded how frightfully often they take place. Again, we were hearing on the local news that parents were being instructed to go to a specific location. I believe it was a community center to make contact with their children who had been evacuated from the school. Let me go back to Tom Winter, our Investigative correspondent Tom, what are you learning?
Lester, something that we're still trying to get a little bit of a handle on, but might perhaps provide us with a bit of a fuller picture as to what occurred here. There's some indication that this 18-year-old suspect, who again, as we reported, is believed to be no longer at large at this point, whether that person is in custody or deceased is something we're trying to get some additional detail on. But there may have been an engagement with law enforcement prior to the school shooting. So that's a question that we're trying to get a handle on. But there was some initial indications, and again, this is preliminary information, and it may in fact change, but some initial indications from law enforcement officials in Texas that this could have started as an incident between this individual and law enforcement, and that there might have been a chase that preceded this incident, this horrific incident at this elementary school. So that's just a little bit of additional detail that we're trying to nail down at this point. As you said, the Texas governor saying that 14 children are dead. Obviously, as I mentioned to you before, that those numbers could go up. They appear to have gone up, as a matter of fact, and we're still trying to understand what the motive could have been here. We have no indication on that at this hour, no indication as to why this individual did what they did today, and obviously just a tremendously sad incident.
All right, Tom Witter, thank you. If you're just joining us, we're just learning from Texas Governor Greg Abbott that at least 14 students and one teacher are dead in an elementary school shooting in Uvalde, Texas. That's a community just outside of San Antonio. The governor also says the alleged shooter was an 18-year-old who lived in the area. Let's let you listen to some of what Governor Abbott said just a short time ago.
The shooter was Salvador Romas, an 18-year-old male who resided in Uvalde. It's believed that he abandoned his vehicle and entered into the Robb Elementary School in Uvalde with a handgun, and he may have also had a rifle, but that is not yet confirmed according to my most recent report. He shot and killed horrifically, incomprehensibly, 14 students and killed a teacher. Mr. Romas, the shooter, he himself is deceased and is believed that responding officers killed him.
All right, that was Governor Abbott just a short time ago, again confirming 15 dead, 14 students, he said, and one teacher, and the shooter is deceased, apparently taken down by police responding to the report of an active shooter at this school. A horrific story that has transpired really over the last several hours. Just to be transparent with you, we began hearing reports a couple of hours ago about this, of an active shooter, and that the shooting had ended. There were no reports of casualties, but slowly the information began to trickle out, and it is just a punch to the gut to have to report this awful calamity. Again, 14 students killed, one teacher killed, the suspect deceased, and we will go through this torturous exercise now of trying to understand the mindset, what drove this person to kill children on, from what I'm led to understand, one of the last days of the school year. That school was about to close for the summer. But instead, we're left with these just simply awful scenes that we've seen play out in too many places. Schools, certainly, we saw it a little over a week ago in Buffalo with another horrific toll. Let me go back to Gabe Gutierrez, who is monitoring more information as it comes out. Anything you can add to where we are right now, Gabe?
Well, Lester, you know, just in the last few moments, hearing that new information from Texas Governor Greg Abbott that this 18-year-old suspect, now deceased, and again identified by the governor as 18-year-old Salvador Ramos, that he abandoned his vehicle and entered the elementary school with a gun and possibly a rifle, although the governor said that at this point that is unconfirmed. As you said, Lester, the investigation now will get underway to try and understand the motivation behind this. It is unclear why he opened fire, but again, that he abandoned his vehicle heading into this school. We are We're waiting to hear more information as well, potentially from local authorities. Again, as you said, this has been unfolding over the last several hours. Just before noon local time, the initial reports of gunfire, gunshots at the school placed on lockdown, an active shooter situation then being discussed on social media by local authorities about a half hour later, and this incident coming to an end just after 1 p.m. local time there in Uvalde, Texas. Again, about 60 miles east from the Texas border with Mexico, about 80 miles west of San Antonio. As we've been reporting, this was set to be the last week of school. The last day of school set to be Thursday in the school that had second through fourth grade. But again, the news there from the Texas governor that 14 children and 1 teacher are dead following this shooting. The suspect, 18 years old, identified by the governor as Salvador Ramos, is dead after being shot and killed by police. Lester.
All right, Gabe, thank you. Let me bring in Dermot Shea now, former New York City Police Commissioner. Commissioner Shea, I'm looking at these pictures now, looking into the school. These may be staff members, these may be other school employees. There's law enforcement. At some point, that stopped being a triage and EMS scene and became a crime scene. I have to think about the people in that school right now, what they have seen, what they have heard, what they have witnessed. You've been through this as a leader of the nation's largest police force. What about them? What's the toll this takes on first responders and those others who were in that building?
As I look at the pictures, Lester, your heart rips out for the grief that everyone feels watching this right now. And you'll have a range of emotions, everyone wanting to do more when there was nothing more that could be done. Whether you're a first responder or somebody that works in this school, they can't be forgotten when this is all done. And honestly, the community is going to have to rally around each other and deal with the unthinkable that they've just gone through. Everyone's heart obviously goes out for the victims and the families of this unspeakable action. And then at some point, we'll have to remember that all of these other people, from the EMS to the people coming, anyone that stepped foot into that school, frankly, saw things that no human should ever see. And, they're professional and they'll do their job and they'll try to determine motives. And you have to ask yourself, what possible motive could there be to somebody to go into that school and to hurt the defenseless? So, that's where we are right now. It's just a terrible, terrible day. People will rally together and they'll get through it. But again, as we started this show, I would ask the same thing. It was barely a week ago that we're talking about Buffalo, and here we are again. So this will inevitably lead to the discussion that continues to come up, and it generally circulates around access to firearms, mental illness, and security at schools. And we probably will be having some version of that discussion again, but we have to get to a place where this cannot be the norm. And becoming numb to this is not the answer. We have to have action. We have to have, concrete steps to keep our kids safe. And it's just heartbreaking to see this video.
It heartbreaking, beyond heartbreaking, to watch this video and to know, as you point out, we've been down this road so many times. Times. And you have to think right now about the families who are, trying to connect with their children, trying to get information, trying to find out what happened. But a tremendous response there. Police apparently shooting and killing the suspect, saving countless lives, perhaps. But we are,
and I could tell you,
yeah,
Lester, I could tell you that they won't view it that way. And it's kind of like making a great arrest in a particular case. It doesn't do a darn bit in a case like this. And that's the kind of psychology that will go through their heads. It will not be that the lives they saved, it's the lives lost. And that's perhaps the right way to look at it. But it is just another case really of where everyone must rally around, support each other, and have faith when it's one of the most difficult times.
The assumption in cases like this is that it's one person, a single shooter. You can't afford to make that assumption, can you?
No, I guarantee there is countless professionals right now at the local level, at the state police level, as well as the FBI, running down leads. And it has to be that way, because you can't assume that this is isolated and that the threat is taken over, because you always have to kind of, in our world, assume the worst. What if this was part of a larger action? And inevitably it's not, and that's one silver lining. But those things are going on right now to try to make sure that nobody else is hurt. What set this person off? Are there people that are injured in his or her house? And all of these things are being examined as we speak. I have no doubt.
Commissioner, we appreciate you staying with us. I want to go to Tom Witter now, our investigative correspondent. Tom, I think it's kind of become the norm now that we don't like to dwell in the suspect and use the suspect's name a lot, but at the same time, it is informative for us to understand what creates the conditions that something like this happens. And so I use it as a prelude to, you're going to give us a bit more information about who this young man was.
Well said, Lester. Salvador Ramos, the spelling of that individual is not clear, but that was the name that was said by Texas Governor Greg Abbott at the press conference, as you outlaid. He said that he brought a handgun to the school, perhaps a rifle, though that wasn't immediately confirmed by the governor. 14 teachers dead, 14 students dead, excuse me, one teacher also dead. He is deceased. As we said, that he was no longer outstanding, and now we do know, in fact, that this individual is dead. We had previously reported that he's believed to be 18 years of age. We are also still trying to track down this information, Lester, as to whether or not he was involved in some sort of incident just prior to the shooting at this elementary school occurring. A couple of things stick out. I was just speaking with our colleague Pete Williams about this, that this is eerily reminiscent of what we saw at Sandy Hook Elementary School in Newtown, Connecticut, where you had potentially an incident that occurred prior to this shooting, and you had an individual who did not go to that elementary school, but was not an adult, or perhaps just an adult in this particular instance, with this individual being 18 years of age, going to that school and turning what would be a normal school day, perhaps the last school day of the year, into an absolute tragedy with these now 14 kids and one teacher dead. So we're still waiting to hear on a couple of different things, and these are the various threads of reporting that we're working on. One is motive. We don't have any idea why this individual could possibly have done what they did today. That's the first thing. The second thing is whether or not they were involved with law enforcement or had committed a crime prior to this shooting at the elementary school occurring, and what nexus this individual had to this elementary school. Is this somebody who had attended this school in the past? Is this somebody who had a particular issue with this elementary school? Hard to imagine what that could be. But those are the three most urgent things that we're looking at this time. And I think understandably, Lester, and as you and the commissioner have been talking about, what a shock this can be to this community, even as law enforcement goes about its duties and its professional work. The exact flow of information at this point and the specifics of this, are still something that is very much under investigation, and we're just trying to not bring rumors at this point, but information that we believe reasonably is confirmed and accurate. So that's what we're working on.
Yeah, you mentioned Sandy Hook, and I was sitting at a desk just like this one across the street in another studio, covering that, and it certainly, the flood of memories comes back to any of us who remember that awful day as we witness another awful day, this in Texas. Uvalde, Texas, the Robb Elementary School. The headline right there on the bottom of your screen, the Texas Governor Abbott confirming 15 are dead, including 14 children, one adult, essentially. A shooter, according to the governor, is also deceased. Joining us now is former ATF Special Agent in Charge and NBC News analyst Jim Kavanaugh. Jim, we thank you for joining us here. What should we be thinking about? What should we be talking about as we try to absorb what is right now overwhelming?
Yeah, I mean, this is a punch in the gut, Lester. I mean, it feels like those mass shootings like Pulse nightclub or Virginia Tech, when you just dropped with a body count in the middle of the case and you just, hits you in the pit of the stomach. We don't know. Tom Winter's reporting that it possibly was a police chase. It's interesting. It could possibly be motive here of escape. The motives for violent crime are greed, power, hate, revenge, and escape. And the violent crimes always fall within those rubrics. Those are large rubrics. Sometimes there's multiple motives. But sometimes we have an escape motive, and that's what Tom Winter is trying to uncover. It's only a possibility. We're not sure. But if the suspect was running from the police and he ran into the elementary school, his motive might have been just escaping the police. And he's in a wild frenzy, maybe a shootout with the police, and then shooting students and everyone around him just because he's in this manic state. You know, the case that's called to mind to me on this is not so much Newtown, although we think about the elementary school children, but it's the parade in Wisconsin, where the mass killer drove through the parade when he believed the police were after him because of a domestic incident in another part of the city. And that motive was escape as well. So sometimes the motive can be a little unclear. We see a lot of video here. There's a lot of Texas state troopers. There's one with his back to us, DPS. You see them with their white hats. There's a lot of Border Patrol there. This is a border area. I was the assistant special agent in charge in Dallas, know Texas well. This is a heavy border area. There's a lot of Border Patrol there. I've seen a lot of Border Patrol on the video feed. I've seen the feds there. I've seen the state troopers. They're going to get all the help they need, but you know it doesn't unroll the tragedy. And you know it's just sad, and just sad to see this happen over and over again. Texas is awash in guns. I mean, if guns made us safer, Texas would be the safest place on earth. But we can't even, you know, keep the school kids safe. So,
yeah, Jim, you know,
needs to rethink it.
You know, people ask me as, you know, anchor of nightly news, you know, what's happening? Why do things seem worse? I don't have an answer for that. Are they worse?
Yeah. I think they are worse. Yes, I think they are. I've been involved in policing for more than 40 years, 45 years, and you know, I think they are worse. The mass shootings that happen in every place that Americans go. I mean, you know, often we used to have violence that involved criminals against criminals and gangs against gangs. Of course, we had hate crimes and some terrorist events, but now we have crimes and mass shootings at supermarkets and schools and movie theaters and colleges, and it's just every facet of American life has been touched by a mass shooting. And there's always lessons to be learned, but we never seem to be able to, you know, get it right. And there's a lot of things that can be done, I think, that aren't being done. And I will bet that this suspect leaked about some of his violence. Maybe he was just a real violent actor that the police were after, and he ran to that school and was able to get in. Well, that tells us that the school's not hardened if that turns out to be the case, and somebody can get in with a gun. So that could be a failure. I mean, you can't think I'm in a small town, it won't happen to me. It happens everywhere. So it just makes you hurt, Lester, for the citizens of Uvalde, for that whole section of Texas. And no matter what we find out, like I say, it's going to be heartache tonight in Uvalde, a heartache all night with these little children.
14 children, one teacher killed. Let's go right now to NBC News correspondent Gabe Gutierrez, who continues to monitor information coming from the scene. Gabe?
Hi there again, Lester. So we're getting two pieces of information more from Governor Abbott. And the first thing is that the governor says that it appears two responding officers were struck by rounds, although they have no serious injuries. So again, two responding officers were hit by gunfire, but they have no serious injuries. The second piece of information, Lester, we're hearing from the governor is that he says it's been reported that the suspect shot his grandmother right before entering the school. Again, according to the governor, he says that the suspect, 18 years old, shot his grandmother before entering the school. It's not yet clear how that shooting may have been related to him opening fire on these children inside the school. But again, those two pieces of information, Lester, that two officers were hit by gunfire but do not have serious injuries. And the governor says that the suspect shot his grandmother before entering that elementary school 80 miles west of San Antonio. Lester.
I was scribbling some notes when we were playing part of the governor's remarks. I just want to make sure I heard it correctly, that the suspect had a handgun and a long gun?
At this point, Lester, and I'm reading a transcript of what Governor Abbott said. He said that he had a handgun and that it appears that he may have had a rifle, although at the time the governor said that that had been unconfirmed. So we do know, according to the governor, again, that he had a handgun and he may have had a rifle, Lester.
Right. And then if I can just clarify also, was the governor quoting a report that the grandmother had been shot, or was he reporting it as
What I'm
fact?
being told here, it has been reported that the subject shot his grandmother right before entering the school. Again, this information coming in, as you have said, in drips and drabs, and we're waiting to find out more information about, what led up to this, and whether there was in fact some sort of chase that the suspect may have been trying to escape from. Again, all those details part of this massive investigation, which involves not just local authorities, but obviously state authorities and federal officials as well. The governor saying that the Texas Department of Public Safety is there on the scene. We have seen Border Patrol agents there as well in this town, Uvalde, Texas, a town of about 15,000 people, just 60 miles east of the Mexican border. But again, 2 officers also have been shot, or at least grazed by gunfire, but according to the governor, their injuries do not appear to be life-threatening, Lester.
All right, and we've been watching folks come and go from, I assume the lobby of the administration building of the school. Some appear to be of civilians, perhaps school employees who are coming out. What we had heard the reporting from the local NBC station in the area is that families were being advised to go to another location to hopefully pick up their children or to get more information about their children. So what we know, and that banner at the bottom of the screen doesn't get any better.
So they want
The Texas governor again confirming that 14 children, 1 teacher has been killed in this horrific shooting. You heard Gabe report a moment ago that prior to this, the reporting is that the suspect apparently shot his grandmother. He is from this particular town, Uvalde, Texas. What transpired before that, there are reports of a chase. This is where the pieces don't all fit the puzzle right now, and we're kind of walking through this. We're learning this together in many ways, the information and sharing what we know and what we don't know at this hour. And Gabe also reporting at least 2 law enforcement officers were struck by return fire, but did not suffer injuries. We can only speculate, perhaps ballistic vests, but they are apparently okay. The aerial scene, now a crime scene. At one point, certainly, it was a scene of, I'm sure, feverish EMS activity, trying to triage and treat wounds the best they can. But at some point, the reality sunk in that this is now a crime scene, a murder scene, a scene of mass murder, coming just a little over a week after what we witnessed in Buffalo, New York, as the pace of active shooters, of mass shootings, just doesn't seem to give way. This all transpired just a couple of hours ago. Dribs and drabs of information coming out, alerting us first to an active shooter situation. No mention of casualties for quite some time. We all took a deep breath, hoping that would continue to be the case. You can see now as the camera widens out, 1, 2, 3, 4 helicopters. We don't know if those are life flight helicopters or law enforcement. But there has been a massive response from that region of Texas to this small community. The school, I think I read about 600 students enrollment, an elementary school. The shooter, who according to authorities is now deceased, lives there in that town of Uvalde. What history he may have with the school or anyone inside the school is another piece of that puzzle that we're going to have to wait to understand. But there you see, welcome to Robb Elementary School. This is not far from the Texas-Mexico border. It's about 80 miles west of San Antonio. There's the map, right? It shows you the where the 2 cities are located. I want to go back to Jim Kavanaugh right now. Jim, I asked Commissioner Shea this question, and I'll ask it to you. You watch those officers going in and out of the building, the ones who are going to have to process this as a crime scene. I don't even want to dare think of what they are seeing. What is that like for them? How do they not become victims in their own way?
Well, they do, really. It's awful, and it's multiplied times 100 when they're little children, because the officers will be parents too, and so it's always very tough. These are tough crime scenes. These are very violent deaths. We become numb to so many people shot. When people are shot with rifles, even pistols, it can be a very violent death, and the scenes are horrific. And when you bring in little children, you just got to understand that the person pulling the trigger is just a monster to aim a gun at little children. So this is a thing that we really have to step up in the country and do a better job of finding out, the leakage on these guys, if that turns out this guy had some intent to go do this at that location, or if it's an escape from the police, to do a better job of hardening the school. Because often in these cases, what we see is a person can get out in a parking lot with a rifle and walk into a building and start killing people, and sometimes shooting them on the outside. And if you don't have enough security that can stop a person walking into your building with a rifle that you can obviously see him carrying, if you don't have enough security to stop that, then you don't have any security in America today. And your doors are open, and you're subject to somebody doing this. So this can come down on two sides of things that need to be done. If the person had leakage, like I said, maybe he intended to go to the school, then we need to do a better job having our little organization in a county, in a region, in a city of, police crisis negotiators, mental health professionals, psychologists, even school board leaders, that when people come to the fore as, this guy's making statements about mass killings, like the guy did in the Buffalo case, there's a little more particular attention paid to him by the right people, and he's not just sloughed off and he's able to say, oh, I was just kidding, and then a year later come and kill 10 people. So we're not doing a good job on that, because we haven't formed these teams that can actively be looking for all those people who are always leaking out and always having these fantasies and always talking about mass murders. And if your county or city or state doesn't have that, and you should be working with the feds too, you need to ramp it up and have it, because that's how you can stop a lot of these things, when you got a small group that focuses on it. Of course, gun laws matter as well. If you're 18 years old in America, you can buy a long gun, any kind of long gun, and devastating weapons that can, magazines with all the rounds you can hold, 100-round drums. There's no limitations at all. So we need to relook at that without hurting people's Second Amendment rights. We just sort of go to the fantastical.
Jim, I'm going to have to cut you off here. It looks like a news conference is about to begin. We certainly want to get the very latest. They're setting, obviously, they're setting mics up right now. As we wait, we don't know exactly who's going to be speaking there. And there you hear some of the sound from the room. Tom Winter, while we wait for this to go, why don't you tell us what you have, and then I may have to cut you off.
Sure. Briefly, Lester, the FBI is on scene. A spokesperson tells us to help assist in this investigation and law enforcement there. We have the spelling of the name of this shooter, Salvador Ramos, first identified by the governor, last name ending in Ramos, R-A-M-O-S, first name Salvador, S-A-L-V-A-D-O-R, and we are mining his social media now. Lester, I'll send it back to you because it looks like this press conference is going to begin.
Maria Espinoza, Executive Director of Communications and Marketing for Uvalde CISD. Please understand, at this time, we will be making a statement and not taking any questions. So we please ask, at this time, we will be making a statement and not taking any questions. Here to provide our statement is our Uvalde CISD Chief of Police, Pete Arredondo.
Good afternoon. As she mentioned, I'm going to make a statement, and at this point, we won't take any questions. We will give you a time when we'll be addressing the media soon. At approximately 11:32 a.m. this morning, there was a mass casualty incident at Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas. The school has children that are in 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade. I can confirm right now that we have several injuries, adults and students, and we do have some deaths. The suspect is deceased at this point. DPS is assisting with the investigation. And at this point, the investigation is leading to tell us that the suspect did act alone during this heinous crime. Families are being notified, and we are providing services to them as the district should. As far as the rest of the district is concerned, safety measures were taken to make sure that we had a safe release for the rest of the district. Throughout our city of Uvalde, and we had numerous law enforcement officers and agencies that assisted with the safety release for those students. We do want to keep all our families in their prayers. I hope you do as well, and we also want to respect the privacy of the family. It is still being worked on, and again, we'll notify the parents and the families as soon as we have some news for them. Thank you so much.
We greatly appreciate your understanding and patience with us. Please know at this time, we are only making a statement. We will be releasing more information as the investigation continues. We appreciate your courtesy. At this time, it concludes our press conference. Thank you.
Okay, a statement from authorities there, differing somewhat or shining a different light. He referred to injuries, some injuries, so we don't know how many individuals may have been injured and are still being treated, but noting that this school, Robb Elementary School, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th graders, so very young children in that school when this vicious attack happened today. So we actually in many ways learned a little bit more from the governor than we just learned in that statement, and frankly, that's going to happen as different agencies decide how much they want to release, what they know to be factual, and what they're still trying to nail down. Let me go back to Tom Winter right now. Tom, I'll be honest, I had a technical adjustment here. I missed some of that. Anything stand out to you?
Not in particular, Pete. A lot of what we would understandably hear, I think, at this point from local officials there in Uvalde, Texas. A couple of details, and this is bringing together the reporting of my colleagues Pete Williams, Jonathan Dietz, and Andy Blankstein. The individual here who police believe is responsible for this shooting is a Salvador Ramos, Salvador, last name Ramos, Ramos, with a date of birth of May 16th, 2004. So he recently had a birthday. That would make him 18, as you and I talked about approximately a half hour ago. Last known address is in Uvalde, Texas. So he's somebody who has at least some recent ties to this community. But again, May 16th, 2004 is the date of birth. And this according to 4 senior U.S. law enforcement officials that have been briefed on this absolute tragedy today. He does have some social media accounts that we're still in the process of going through, Lester. We want to be cautious, as we saw in the Buffalo shooting and was well reported on at the time. There were a number of postings that occurred surrounding that shooting regarding white supremacy, regarding a motive for that shooting. It's unclear whether any of that information exists on Ramos's accounts, but there are some posts there of concern to us that we want to go through. We want to make sure that they are accurate, that they are valid before we report on those and bring them to you just out of an abundance of caution. But again, this 18-year-old individual, Salvador Ramos, believed to be from that town in Texas, is the person who police say and the governor has said is responsible for this shooting. Brought a handgun to this school today, perhaps a rifle, according to Texas Governor Greg Abbott. So we know that they used a handgun. And then, as Gabe alluded to before that press conference, and the governor spoke about, you and I have spoken about, this idea that there was perhaps a shooting prior to the incident at the elementary school, perhaps involving a relative of Ramos. That's something that we're still trying to get some additional details on, and whether or not there was any sort of police involvement just leading up to this. And as Gabe reported, it appears that several officers were injured in the course of trying to end this incident today. Ramos is deceased, as we have said previously. In the investigation, as Commissioner Dermot Shea laid out, is one that will remain ongoing. We know the FBI is involved in an assist mode. So basically, they will assist with any sort of law enforcement things they can help out Texas authorities with, the Texas Rangers, perhaps with the lead agency here, although I want to get a little bit more confirmation on that, Lester.
Yeah, I understand the need for caution as we go through social media information, and I'm sure police are going through the same process, the same exercise as you. Can you tell me this? Is there any indication that would make authorities suspect that he did not act alone, that maybe there were others involved here?
Nothing that we've seen yet, and in our discussions with law enforcement officials with ties to Texas, as well as those being briefed elsewhere throughout the country, we have not heard of any involvement of any additional parties or any additional individuals. No initial indication, and I stress the word initial there, Lester, of any sort of involvement with a terrorist organization. You know, we get criticized for not calling these types of incidents terrorist attacks when they are clearly so terrifying, when 14 children are dead in an elementary school, but we classify it that way because that's how law enforcement classifies it. So when we call something terrorism or not, or say that that's what police are looking into or not, we're referring to organizations that are typically designated that way. As a for instance, and purely as a for instance, talking about Al-Qaeda or ISIS or something like that, those are designated terrorist organizations by the United States. So when we say there's no initial belief that this is involved with terrorism, we're speaking specifically that there's no indication that somebody was inspired by or directed by those organizations, but it obviously has nothing to do with the fact that this is a terrifying incident, certainly for the children that were inside that school today and their families and relatives.
Yeah, already we're seeing the flags at half-staff there outside the school and the scene of this. Tom, one other thought here. After the Buffalo attack of just over a week ago, we suddenly realized, what information had been out there about the alleged shooter, his earlier being questioned by authorities over a threat at the school. Is there anything on the level of a clearinghouse, a database that allows authorities to keep a watch on individuals who may exhibit this sort of behavior?
That's a super question. There really is no national database when it comes to people within the United States. Certainly there are national and international databases as it relates to federal authorities and to those that might be on the no-fly list, I mentioned as an example. That type of database, and there's actually multiple databases there, those exist. Certainly there are databases that have an individual's prior criminal history. Those certainly exist in this country, we know that. But as far as those that have been a threat prior to a particular incident occurring, there's no particular database there. If there is a federal investigation and the individual is of age, there could be something in the FBI's Guardian system, but that would only exist as far as a backward looking or if somebody was being actively looked at now. Let me try to put that into English. If you thought that I was somebody who might be trying to act out and carry out a shooting attack or some sort of terrorist attack and, in fact, notified the authorities, if it went federal, that is something that might be put in the FBI's computer system as they work that case as part of a joint terrorism task force, for instance, and then at some point that would either be closed out, meaning that officials at the time believed that I was no longer or not a threat, or I might be charged based on the results of their investigation. But it's not something that is commonly consistently looked at. And of course, we have a First Amendment in this country. People are allowed to say an awful lot of things that most people would find incredibly offensive, but it is not something that you can be charged with. So that level of coordination, what can happen at the federal level versus the state level, is something that is certainly being examined in light of all of these incidents. And I think state law enforcement officials have a role here. And I think you see state polices across the country starting to look at this and say, is there a way that we can start to identify these individuals if they've made a threat? I say all this, and you're asking all this because of what we've seen recently, though we have no indication so far today at this early hour that there was any sort of threat made previously by the individual responsible for the shooting, who authorities have identified as Salvador Ramos.
All right, Tom Winter with that information as Tom and his team continue to pour through social media postings by the suspect and try to learn a little bit more. What we can show you now are these images of the officers and paramedics now essentially in a security mode, securing the school as a crime scene after the horrific discovery. Officers apparently encountering the suspect, shooting and killing him. Some of the officers apparently hit, though not wounded. And then, of course, the discovery that 15 people, 1 adult, 14 children, had been killed inside. What led up to this, that's still being pieced together as we speak. We heard the report that he perhaps may have shot his grandmother prior to this in that community. That there may have been some sort of chase, all these little pieces that we can't quite confirm into the overall picture of what transpired there today. But certainly the horror of it all has taken us all down that dark hole that we've gone down so many times, covering mass shootings in America. Let me go to Kristen Welker right now at the White House. Kristen, has the president been briefed on what's happening?
Lester, he has been briefed. He is traveling home from Asia on Air Force One, and his press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre, just released this statement. Let me read it to you. President Biden has been briefed on the horrific news of the elementary school shooting in Texas and will continue to be briefed regularly as information becomes available. His prayers are with the families impacted by this awful event, and he will speak this evening when he arrives back at the White House. We anticipate he'll return in and around 7:30 p.m. Eastern time, so we will be tracking that very closely and, of course, bring any news and any developments from his remarks. But, Lester, just big picture here, it was just 1 week ago that President Biden visited a Buffalo community where 10 people were killed in a racist attack. And he was playing the role of consoler-in-chief. Now, that was not the first time that he has visited a community that has been ravaged by gun violence. This is a president who ran on a campaign promising to try to push Congress to enact stiffer gun laws. That has not happened. And you go back 10 years nearly when President Biden was the vice president under former President Obama and the Sandy Hook massacre happened. In that massacre, 20 elementary school children were killed. In that instance, new gun legislation was proposed in Congress and it failed. And so you talk about this dark hole that the country goes down, these conversations that happen. And so yet again, history repeats itself with very little answers about what, if anything, to do about these horrific, horrific events that continue to unfold in communities all across our countries. And so President Biden continues to travel home, and we will hear from him later this evening, Lester.
All right, Kristen, thanks very much. It's 5:30 in the East right now. Let's bring you up to speed. If you're just joining us, we're covering breaking news out of Texas, where at least 14 children and 1 teacher are dead in a tragic elementary school shooting in Uvalde, Texas. It's a community just outside of San Antonio. The alleged shooter, an 18-year-old who lived in the area, apparently acting alone, also deceased. 2 responding officers were shot at the scene, but they have no serious injuries. Here's the update we got from officials a short while ago.
Good afternoon. As she mentioned, I'm going to make a statement, and at this point we won't take any questions. We will give you a time when we'll be addressing the media soon. At approximately 11:32 a.m. this morning, there was a mass casualty incident at Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas. The school has children that are in 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade. I can confirm right now that we have several injuries, adults and students, and we do have some deaths. The suspect is deceased at this point. DPS is assisting with the investigation. And at this point, the investigation is leading to tell us that the suspect did act alone during this heinous crime. Families are being notified, and we are providing services to them as the district should. As far as the rest of the district is concerned, safety measures were taken to make sure that we had a safe release for the rest of the district. Throughout our city of Uvalde, and we had numerous law enforcement officers and agencies that assisted with the safety release for those students. We do want to keep all their families in their prayers. I hope you do as well. And we also want to respect the privacy of the family. Everything is still being worked on. And again, we'll notify the parents and the families as soon as we have some news for them. Thank you so much.
We got that update just a short while ago. As Kristen Welker noted, the president is expected to address the incident later this evening. He's in the air right now, returning from Asia. Here, though, is what the governor of Texas said just a short time ago.
The shooter was Salvador Romas, an 18-year-old male who resided in Uvalde. It's believed that he abandoned his vehicle and entered into the Robb Elementary School in Uvalde with a handgun, and he may have also had a rifle, but that is not yet confirmed according to my most recent report. He shot and killed horrifically, incomprehensibly, 14 students and killed a teacher. Mr. Romas, the shooter, he himself is deceased. And is believed that responding officers killed him.
Let's bring in NBC News correspondent Tom Costello now. Tom, an FBI report just released shows active shooter incidents in the U.S. in 2021 increased by more than 50%. So for those of us, saying, does it seem to be getting worse? The answer is yes.
Yeah, and that headline actually is maybe a little misleading, only because 2021 compares to 2020 when much of the country was in lockdown. But the next stat is just as concerning, if not more so. When you look at the number of mass shootings in 2021, we had, listen to this number, a 171% increase, up 171% over 2020. 61 incidents in 2021. And the shooters generally are male, 60 male and 1 female out of all of those cases. 14 of those shooters were killed by law enforcement, 4 shooters killed by armed citizens, and then 11 shooters committed suicide. For 2021, the FBI says it observed an emerging trend, and this is important here, involving roving active shooters here. These would be shooters who shoot in multiple locations, either in one day or in various locations over several days. And as you know, we've been making mention of this. The FBI's guidance right now is not to name the shooter or to provide as little information, give them as little publicity as possible, hopefully, therefore, de-emphasizing them, and therefore they don't become a hero to the next shooter in waiting out there. But that has been an emphasis over the last few years as law enforcement really tries to put the emphasis instead on the victims, on the community, on the healing, if you will, and not on the individual shooters. As you know, they have become household names, especially in these notorious shootings, like, for example, the Columbine massacre. But again, the FBI report is affirming what you and I think we feel every time we turn on the news of yet another mass shooting. 52% increase in 2021 over 2020. But again, there was a pandemic lockdown in 2020. So if you compare that instead to for example, 2017, we had a dramatic increase and up 171% over 2020. So this, in fact, is a trend that the FBI is confirming.
Tom Costello. Tom, thank you. Let me bring in NBC News producer Amy Calvin, who has now made her way to the scene. Amy, can you tell us what you're seeing and what you've learned?
Hi, Lester. It is absolutely horrific here at the convention center. This is where the children were brought to be picked up by their parents. Teachers have been trickling out with their family. Kids have been picked up with by their parents. It's very emotional. It's heavy. There's law enforcement here, DPS, Border Patrol, local police. They just brought us in for a very short media briefing, and inside there was more teachers and very emotional inside. I talked to one husband of a teacher who had just brought his wife some flowers before the shooting. She's retiring on Friday, so he brought her some flowers, and he said when he got back into his truck, he heard the gunshots. He said his wife got the children and went to the cafeteria real quick, and they turned off the light. She's okay, but obviously a horrific situation for everybody here.
Can you confirm that the children were within the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grades?
I can't, but I will go inside and ask that. They were bringing teachers from the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grades into a room after the media briefing, and I believe a chaplain was going in with them. So I will check on that and let you know.
All right, and so again, the unharmed children were taken to the convention center, and parents are being reunited there. No parents are going to the school, as far as we know.
I've only been to the convention center, but this is where many parents were picking up their children. So I believe they were brought here, and the teachers as well. Lots of the teachers' family were also meeting them.
All right, Mary, I'll let you go for the time being, but we thank you, Mary, on the scene there outside the convention center, where it's serving as a reunification center, if you will, for families as well as school staff. Let me go back to Tom Winter right now, our investigative correspondent. Tom, what do you have?
Sure, Lester. So the full name of the individual who's believed to be responsible for this shooting is identified by the Texas governor and multiple law enforcement officials to the NBC News investigative team here is Salvador Rolando Ramos. Born in May of 1994, so he recently had a birthday on May 16th. He's 18 years of age. Unclear if he had any prior involvement with law enforcement. It does appear that he had 2 social media accounts. We are in the process of going through those now to identify whether or not there was anything that spoke specifically to the actions that he allegedly took today. He is deceased, according to those officials and the Texas governor. He arrived at this school apparently with at least a handgun, if not also a rifle, according to the governor, and then committed this horrific act, according to those officials. His last known address was in this similar town, Uvalde, Texas. We are trying to determine at this point whether or not he actually went to this elementary school. Obviously, he's 18 years of age, so he would no longer be going to this particular school, but whether or not he attended there in the past. We continue to report out details of what the governor said, as well as what law enforcement officials have told myself, Jonathan Dienst, and Pete Williams, that there was some sort of an incident that occurred prior to the shooting at the school today, possibly also involving a relative, and then the incident at the school happened, trying to determine whether or not there was any sort of pursuit by law enforcement. As we reported just a few moments ago, the FBI is on scene to assist Texas authorities, and as you heard from the just about 10 minutes ago, Lester, when you played it, from the local police chief in Uvalde, that they believe at this point this individual acted alone. The investigation from here would focus on the handguns. Were they in fact legally purchased? If not, was anybody involved in assisting him in getting these guns, or should anybody have stopped this along the way, did not perform their duties under law? It's way too soon for that type of information to come out, though we are trying to get that information because obviously it's an important part of what we look at here, and obviously an important part of any sort of investigation, and that component might very well involve the ATF as well. So that's kind of where we stand as far as where this goes from here. When you have an alleged shooter who is deceased, from an investigative standpoint, there's not a whole ton to do there. But whenever we see an incident like this, and you've mentioned it a couple of times, Lester, I think back to it because I was one of the first people that responded to Newtown, and when that incident happened, and I remember being there and just the enormity of it all. When we talk about this amount of children that are dead, there is an investigation that occurs as to how this could possibly have gotten to this point. And the Connecticut State Police and the Connecticut Department of Public Safety put together a very comprehensive investigation. They even examined whether or not there were vibrations in the neighborhood of the shooter there, Adam Lanza, that could have been responsible for triggering some sort of mental episode that led to this. And one of the things they examined was the relationship that he had with his mother, his availability of getting guns, his tremendous interest in prior mass shootings, the type of clothing that he wore. I'll never forget the pictures from his bedroom where he was outfitted in kind of almost a tactical vests. He had numerous of those vests, and he had his windows somehow taped over with trash bags. It was very unusual, and for somebody to carry out this type of attack and incident is also highly unusual, though, as Tom pointed out and you pointed out, mass shootings are becoming, unfortunately, more common. So that's the level of investigation that might go into this. Why why these authorities and while these authorities try to determine how anybody could have possibly done this. But again, Salvador Ramos, age 18. Last known address in Uvalde, Texas, is the individual who's responsible for this, according to the governor and according to law enforcement officials. And that person is now deceased, and that's where this investigation stands at this hour.
Yeah, if I understood the governor correctly, that he arrived in a car, got out of the car there, so they will. It's hard to tell from these pictures what car it is, or even if it's in our line of sight here. But that could also presumably garner some information, something he may have left behind.
Right. So based on some open source reporting and some images we've seen and looked at and are trying to confirm, Lester, I don't think we're looking at his car anywhere in this particular picture, but we want to get a little bit more information. To your point, yes, the vehicle, obviously, were there any last minute notes that were left behind? Did he write any sort of messages? We've seen that in the past. Inside the vehicle, did he have more ammunition, more weapons, all things that they're going to take a look at as they try to examine. And Lester, we're looking at a vehicle there. Yeah, that's something that had been pointed to us before. Not 100% sure that this is the shooter's vehicle, but we had been pointed to that before. And obviously, you see a member of law enforcement there looking at it. And so it's not clear to me 100% if that's the vehicle, but obviously it's in a drainage ditch near the school, clearly out of place. So that's something that they'll certainly be looking at and something we'll continue to report on.
Okay, we'll continue to watch that and hopefully get a little more information. I want to bring in, if I can, NBC News law enforcement analyst Cedric Alexander. And Cedric, we've been through this awful exercise so many times, and we know in many ways the things that will transpire. And as Tom pointed out, looking through social media, trying to answer this question, were there mixed signals? It's often a very treacherous road that comes from here. Cedric, try me where we at. We didn't have your audio. You want to try one more time?
Yes. Good afternoon, Lester. Let me say this. First of all, one of the challenges here, of course, for us as a nation, we have seen this over and over and over again. And we're basically saying the same thing that we said during the Buffalo shooting last week and the shooting before that, the shooting before that. There's something really very different that's going to have to take place in this nation around gun laws. And of course, it's just not where guns are being sold in licensed places of business. It's also the number of guns that are out there on our streets every day. And it's not just those who may have some mental health issues, supposedly. This issue is just so far reaching. And we, over the years as a nation, and our Congress in particular, has really failed to do anything about these tragic shootings that we see year after year. And I tell you, for someone who spent 40 years in law enforcement and do a lot of work consulting with police departments who are doing their very best to get in front of things, the very best that they can, this nation needs help from a congressional level, from Washington, D.C. And this talk on both sides of the aisle, I don't care whether it's the right or the left, people tonight in this country really should be angry. Everyone should be angry that 14 babies, teacher lost their lives again.
You're right. Last week, covering the events in Buffalo, I raised the issue of how do you find the ticking time bombs among us, individuals who are capable of this kind of crime. Is there a good answer to that question?
No, it's not going to be an answer to that question. We got 300 million people in this country. And in addition to that, we have more guns than we have people in this country, guns that are accessible, whether they're bought, they're stolen out of cars or homes, whatever the case may happen to be. The issue is here, Lester, for us as a nation, it's not what we're going to do after the shooting. It's what we need to do before this shooting take place. Trying to identify those who may have some indicators that they may go out and do something violent. Police can't track but so many people at a time. We got 300 million people in this country. We only got 700,000 police officers. So I think if we think about it in that sense and from that perspective, there are those that they might be able to get in front of. But I'm going to tell you, that is very, very difficult to do with the number of guns that are out there, the people who are living, some people who are living in mental health distress, some people who are just downright hateful, and those who are just totally irresponsible. So I think this country, this night, tonight, really needs to come to terms, and the leadership in this country, in Washington, D.C., really needs to come to terms with how we're going to fix this, because talking about it, offering our condolences to it, is not going to stop the next tragedy. And there very well may be another tragedy, because we have done nothing different going all the way back to Colorado in the late 90s, all the way up until where we are here today. Something very different and drastic is going to have to take place in this country. And look, we know, all of us, many of us, are certainly believe in the Second Amendment. I'm not opposed to it. The greatest majority of the people out there who may be gun owners are good, law-abiding citizens. But we have to be honest with ourselves. There's also people out there we cannot account for and who may be today mentally stable, but something can happen in their life tonight, tomorrow, the next day that push them over the cliff, and we don't know what's going to happen. And that's assuming they have a mental health issue, because there could be other issues that drive these types of violence. But one thing we know, the one common denominator, is that we got to address this gun issue, and we need leadership from the top to do this, because talking about it is not going to change it, and American people should be really angry tonight.
Part of the conversation as the country witnesses another mass shooting, the deaths of 14 children, one teacher in Texas. Let's bring in NBC News Chief White House correspondent Kristen Welker. Kristen, what more are you learning from the White House?
Well, we're getting new details about when we can expect to hear from President Biden about this horrific mass shooting. He's going to address the nation at 8:15 p.m. Eastern time from the Roosevelt Room. Now, again, he is traveling back from Asia as we speak. He has been briefed on this shooting aboard Air Force One. His press secretary saying his prayers are with the families impacted by this awful event. So we will hear him undoubtedly reiterate those remarks when he addresses the nation later this evening, extend his condolences to the families. And again, Lester, it was just 1 week ago that he was visiting Buffalo, a community there that was riven by a mass shooting. 10 people killed in that incident. Now, this is a president who campaigned on a promise to enact stiffer gun laws. That, of course, has not happened. He has tried to pass some executive orders. He was asked just a few days ago if those executive orders would have a real impact. He said, realistically speaking, not without legislation. And even though we are still all just processing the horror that has unfolded in this Texas community, there are already calls for action on Capitol Hill. Democrat Chris Murphy saying in an interview, what are we doing? Why are you here, meaning in Congress, if not to solve a problem as existential as this? So already the calls for action have started. But as you and I were talking about earlier, Lester, this is not the first mass shooting to impact children. Nearly 10 years ago, 20 children were killed during a massacre at Sandy Hook Elementary School in Connecticut. And there was a lot of debate in the wake of that incident, but nothing significant changed legislatively. There, of course, is a robust debate in this country about what, if anything, should happen to prevent these types of horrific incidents from happening. Again, that is the backdrop against which we wait to hear from President Biden as he continues to travel home from Asia. His focus has been on foreign policy for the past several days, but now it turns to domestic policy and to this latest mass shooting, one of a number that have happened since he has taken office and, of course, in recent history, Lester.
Yeah, Kristen, thanks. No parent should have to send their second, third, or fourth grader to school and worry that they're going to get shot to death. Joining us now is former ATF special agent in charge and NBC News analyst Jim Kavanaugh. Jim, you know, this information is coming now so quickly and so horrific. Some of the same conversations that we were having a week ago, we're having again today. I'm just curious, as a seasoned law enforcement professional, what strikes you as you see these images and hear these numbers?
I just think it's so sad, because I really do think that the country can do things to stop these. You know, the FBI did a study on mass shooters, and a very high number, I think it was up to 77% or so of mass shooters leaked their intent to people around them, relatives, friends, boyfriends, girlfriends, other students, teachers, even the police, on social media. They leak out what they're going to do. Think of the number, 77% I think was their finding. Even if it's just close to that number, that shows us that 3/4 of these people can be stopped if we set in place the mechanisms to stop them. And I'm telling you, in most places we don't do that. That leakage comes to the attention of someone who passes it to a law enforcement officer who may not be totally trained and totally adept and might not have the team around him easily, constantly, maybe every week, in some jurisdictions daily, that they can evaluate that and take direct action to make sure that people involved in this person's life is notified, courts are involved, mental health professionals are involved, agents like ATF are involved, FBI is involved. Does he have guns? Is he doing anything illegal? And we could pass new laws. We have a federal law that says if you're convicted of a misdemeanor crime of domestic violence, a misdemeanor crime in any state, you cannot possess firearms. That's a federal law. Well, when we have a person that threatens a mass shooting, let's take the Buffalo supermarket shooter. A year before, he said he was going to commit a mass murder. He wanted to commit a mass murder, and he was referred to mental health professionals who he then said he was kidding. Now, think if we had a federal law that says if you threaten a mass shooting and you're convicted of that misdemeanor threat, let's just say it's a misdemeanor threat, then you're prohibited from owning or possessing firearms. Why is that important? Many mass shooters just buy them in a gun shop. They're not part of the criminal underworld that buy these guns in an alley. They buy them at the gun store. And even if they were to try to buy guns in an alley, informants might turn them in. It's some risk to them criminally. They could be arrested on the way to a mass shooting. And because they're prohibited from owning guns, they could be arrested by the police or the federales. So there's a lot of things that can be done. We're just so weak-kneed, and we really have to take it on. Each community has to take it on and say, if anybody's leaking in my community, mental health-wise, white hate-wise, international terrorist-wise, any kind of criminal-wise that they think they're going to do a mass shooting, we have a team ready, evaluating that constantly, and we're ready to step in and take positive steps.
Yeah, but Jim,
so
as you know,
we're
still learning the facts and details of what happened here. We saw a crashed pickup truck, which may or may not have been the suspects. He may or may not have been fleeing another crime. I think it was you mentioned earlier that sometimes these things fall into different categories, and one is fleeing another situation. Do you see any signs of that here as something that may have driven him to that school?
Right, Lester, exactly. Well, a motive for violent crime, one of the big motives can be escape. An inmate can kill a deputy trying to escape. They can, like the case in Wisconsin, run over and kill 5 parade goers while they're trying to escape the police. We have some preliminary indication, as Tom Winter was exploring, but it wasn't totally confirmed. Pete Williams, they were looking at this. Was he fleeing the police? But there's some evidence here that he might have killed his grandmother. So did he kill his grandmother and was then fleeing the police? Maybe there was gunshots at his home or something, and he's fleeing the police in that murder. That's the second part of the equation. The one part of the equation to stop these things is having a team ready. The second part is you got to harden up the school. You can't just let people walk in with a rifle and start massacring everybody. That school's not hardened up enough. Needs to be better.
All right, Jim. Thank you for your insight and analysis. Joining us now from Texas is NBC News correspondent Morgan Chesky. Morgan, what are you learning on the ground?
Yeah, Lester, we just arrived in Uvalde. The perimeter that has gone up around Robb Elementary School is substantial, and I can tell you there is a heavy police presence here, heavily armed, as they continue to gather evidence in this very dynamic situation. There is a civic center about a quarter mile from where I'm standing, Lester, and that has become just an absolutely emotional epicenter of this community. That is where students were taken to be reunited with their parents, and you can imagine in a community of just 15,000 1,000 people. How powerfully felt this is across this entire area. We have seen one husband in particular arrive at that reunification center, and he shared with our producer that he had brought flowers to his wife today to celebrate the last week of school. And that's when he initially heard the gunshots and realized something was horrifically wrong. We heard Texas Governor Greg Abbott today confirming the absolute worst. 14 students killed here in Uvalde, Texas today. One teacher lost. And Lester, if I could just share one quick story with you on how tight-knit this community is. When I arrived here and I began walking towards the school, I parked in front of a gentleman's home and I made sure that it was okay to do so. He said yes, and he said, by the way, the teacher that was killed inside that school today is my niece. We are going to hear more of these stories in the coming hours and days, but as of right now, it is a heartbreaking scene here in Uvalde on the edge of the Texas Hill Country, about 90 miles west of San Antonio. And this elementary school joining a heartbreaking list of so many others that have been impacted by school shootings. We do anticipate another update from officials tonight, Lester. We want to hear more about this gunman that walked inside with a handgun, potentially a rifle as well, when he started to open fire earlier today. We do know that police were initially dispatched to this location at about 11:42 a.m. That's when the calls of the active shooter initially went out. And there are still some gaps in the timeline that we are seeking clarity in as this investigation goes forward. We do know that that gunman is dead tonight. We do know he is from the city of Uvalde, Texas. But again, no word on any potential motive, and we are still awaiting to hear the names of those deceased. 14 students and one teacher. Lester?
Yeah. Morgan, thank you. We've been covering the tragic story out of Texas where an alleged lone 18-year-old gunman killed, as we just heard, at least 14 children and one teacher at Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas, a community just outside San Antonio. The alleged shooter lives in the area and is also deceased. Later this evening, the president is expected to address the nation on the incident. We're going to keep a close eye on the story as it develops. We'll bring you all the latest tonight on NBC Nightly News. In fact, we'll be joining our viewers in the East and Central time zones in about a half hour. For all of us here at NBC News, I'm Lester Holt in New York. Good day, everyone.